I woke up 10 years in the past, given an impossible chance to rewrite the single decision that destroyed my life. This saga, the day I lost her, is about confronting that crushing regret and fighting a destiny I set into motion. I knew the only way forward was to stop the younger, arrogant version of myself before he walked out on Emma. This 4-part scene, this clash with my former self, was the crucible of my redemption. I saw him across the small quad, leaning against the rusty car he drove back then. He was so carefree, so carelessly handsome, the person I was before guilt etched lines on my face. My chest tightened with a physical ache of desperation. I had to make him listen. I moved quickly, stepping directly into his line of sight. And quote, "Ethan, stop. Don and Appos. T go to that dinner tonight." End quote. He squinted at me, annoyed, running a hand through his perpetually neat hair. End quote. "Who are you? Do I know you?" End quote. End quote. "I know you." End quote. I insisted, the urgency in my voice making me sound slightly frantic. End quote. "I am you 10 years from now. Listen to me. If you walk away from Emma Collins tonight, you will destroy everything. That life with Valeria Morgan is not a future. It's a gilded cage. It is empty." End quote. A slow, self-satisfied smile spread across his face, a look I used to wear constantly. End quote. "You must be kidding me." End quote. He looked me up and down, taking in my exhausted eyes and the subtle lines of stress that had taken root over a decade of unhappiness. End quote. "Look at you. You look like you Haven and Appos. T slept in a decade, and you're trying to tell me, the guy about to seal a partnership with a Morgan heiress, that I'm making a mistake? Get lost, pal." End quote. He checked the watch Valeria had bought him, already showing the priority of money over time. End quote. "I have a future to build." End quote. I grabbed his arm, my hand shaking. This was the moment. End quote. "You will lose her, the true love of your life. You choose status over integrity, and that choice will cost you everything you actually value." End quote. He violently shrugged me off, stepping back as if I were infectious. End quote. "Security is integrity, old man. And honestly, if that's what I look like after 10 years of success, maybe I should accelerate the meeting and make sure I avoid your path altogether." End quote. He turned and walked away, dismissing me completely. I stood there, gasping, watching my younger self disappear down the street, racing toward Valeria, racing toward the ruin I knew intimately. The failure was absolute. I was a lunatic to him, a ghost of failure he desperately wanted to avoid becoming. I realized then that my mission wasn't to change the mind of that self-absorbed 24-year-old. He was too far gone in his arrogance. The timeline wouldn't allow such a simple course correction. If I wanted to save my future, I had to stop fighting myself. I had to start fighting the past itself. I had to win Emma back directly. I need allies in this fight against destiny. If you're invested in seeing if I can actually pull this off, if I can successfully undo a decade of catastrophic mistakes, make sure you and Appos following the rest of this story. My gaze shifted across the quad toward the small, familiar cafe. Emma was inside, waiting for a call that the younger me was already planning not to make. She was unaware that her fate was hanging in the balance, or that the man approaching her now was a desperate second chance. I started walking toward her. That was the only chance I had left. I watched him walk away, my younger self so full of that aggressive, blind confidence that only comes before the first great failure. He saw me as a homeless lunatic trying to spoil his perfect life. He couldn't hear the decade of regret in my voice. He only heard envy. I wanted to shake him, to force him to see the cold, empty mansion that awaited him, the beautiful but poisonous woman who would strip him of his soul piece by piece. But he vanished around the corner, leaving me stranded in this past that was both familiar and hostile. It was in that moment of absolute failure that the plan changed entirely. I had tried to reason with arrogance, and arrogance always wins when it hasn't tasted defeat. My mission was never to save the younger Ethan Miller. My mission was to save Emma Collins. I couldn't stop the past version of me from making the mistake, but I could make sure that mistake didn't stick. I pulled the collar of my jacket up. I had maybe a week before the original timeline's clock hit 0, The exact night I told Emma I was leaving her for Valeria. I had to outrun fate. The first step was locating her. I remembered her routines. The little vintage coffee shop near the old university library. The one where she spent hours sketching. If you've ever felt that powerful, gut-wrenching urge to revisit a perfect moment from your past, you know the strange mix of hope and terror that hit me. I destroyed that moment once. I wooed and oppose. Do it again. I needed to insert myself into her life subtly, not as the desperate man who had chased his own shadow, but as the man she deserved. I couldn't and oppose. Afford to scare her away with the weight of my future knowledge. She already looked at me strangely, like she was feeling an echo of a life we hadn't lived yet. I started walking toward the university district. Every brick on the sidewalk, every familiar scent of cheap coffee and old paper, was a dagger of nostalgia. I was walking back toward the only happiness I had ever known, knowing that Valeria, the force of my original destruction, was already orbiting somewhere, waiting for the timeline to push her back into my arms. I was the ghost of what was coming, and ghosts, I learned, are incredibly motivated. I wasn't going to waste another minute chasing my arrogant past self. I was going to find Emma. Now, I watched him go, my younger self, arrogant and already vibrating with the energy of imminent bad decisions. He walked exactly like the man who thought he was trading a small life for a big one. He was deaf to reason, blinded by the promise of luxury. He called me crazy. I rubbed my tired eyes, feeling the exhaustion of a decade of misery condensed into that one failed exchange. I had pinned all my hope on logical intervention. I thought seeing the consequence, seeing me, would be enough to break through his ambition. I was wrong. The past me was completely impenetrable. He had already chosen the path of ruin, and nothing short of a literal disaster was going to stop him. The weight of the realization crushed me. I couldn't change the past by changing the person who made the mistake. He was too deep in the gravitational pull of Valeria's orbit. He dismissed me as a pathetic drunk, a ghost of a failure. And maybe that's what I was to him, a warning he was too proud to heed. The failure was absolute, but the clarity that followed was sharp and terrifying. My energy had been focused on stopping the error. Now I had to focus on preserving the good. I had to win Emma back directly. I couldn't dismantle the path to Valeria, so I had to build the road back to Emma so sturdy that even the pull of destiny couldn't tear it down. I felt the immense pressure of the timeline working against me. Every minute I spent trying to reason with an idiot was a minute I wasn't spending reminding Emma why she loved me. This failure felt agonizingly personal. If you could whisper one warning to your younger self, knowing they would laugh in your face, what crucial piece of truth would you scream? That impotence was my current reality. It was time to accept that the young man I used to be was lost. My focus had to shift entirely to the woman I lost because of him. She was the anchor, the reward, the reason I traveled back. I had to find her before the forces of time pushed Valeria into my peripheral vision again. The past had refused my correction. Now I would rewrite it one conscious choice at a time. I started walking, the direction clear. I needed to see Emma. I watched him go, my younger self, striding confidently down the street, already dialing Valeria's number, already shedding the quiet, profound love he shared with Emma for the promise of status and wealth. He didn't just reject my warning. He treated me like a hallucination, a deranged man screaming prophecies. The futility hit me with physical force, sinking me against the cold brick wall of the alley. I had failed, utterly. I wasted days trying to intercept a younger, arrogant version of myself who believed I was the lunatic, not him. The shortcut was gone. I couldn't and oppose. Saved my life by preventing a decision. I had to save it by making the right decision now. I inhaled sharply, tasting the cleaner, less polluted air of the past. 10 years ago, the mistakes had just been possibilities. Now they were active weapons being deployed by my own ghost. The younger me was about to break Emma's heart, just as I remembered. The realization clarified everything. I wasn't here to convince myself. I was here to win Emma back. I had the map. I knew every wound I was about to inflict, every weak point in the foundation of her future trust. My advantage was the knowledge of the decade we lost. The anniversaries, the birthdays, the simple Tuesday nights spent laughing in the kitchen that I threw away for gilded silence. I pushed off the wall, feeling a sudden surge of focused determination replacing the despair. If you've ever had a choice you desperately needed to undo, you know exactly how heavy this moment feels. I had to outrun the mistake, not prevent it. I had to position myself, the older, wiser Ethan, as the protector, the true anchor, before Emma finished bleeding out from the injury my other self was about to inflict. This wasn't an Appos about saving Ethan Miller from ruin anymore. This was about proving to Emma Collins that the man who loved her wasn't an Appos gone. He had just been lost in time, and now he was finally home. I started walking, the noise of the younger city fading into the single thought that propelled me. I have to find her before she closes her heart forever. The battle against my own past was over. The war against the future I desperately wanted to prevent had just begun. I watched my younger self disappear around the corner, his head held high, completely dismissive of the truth I was screaming at him. He thought I was a pathetic drunk or a lunatic trying to ruin his perfect plan. He was still the same arrogant idiot I used to be. The failure hit me like a physical punch. I couldn't stop the mistake from happening. I realized that now. I had wasted precious time trying to dismantle a version of me that was fixed on this timeline. My true opponent wasn't an Appos him. It was the clock, and it was Valeria. I turned and started walking in the opposite direction, the sound of my own footsteps echoing on the pavement. My mission wasn't to save the past Ethan. My mission was to save Emma. She was the only thing that mattered. If I couldn't in Appos stop myself from breaking her heart, I had to be the one to heal it before the split happened. I had maybe a week, 7 days, before the gravitational pull of Valeria Morgan became too strong for that 24-year-old fool to resist. I knew the itinerary of ruin by heart. I lived it. I had to approach Emma not as a ghost of the future, but as a man desperately fighting for a second chance he didn't deserve. She had looked at me earlier, seen the pain in my eyes, felt that flicker of déjà vu. That was my opening. I had to amplify that feeling, make her trust the man standing in front of her now, not the one who was about to walk out the door. It was the hardest negotiation of my life, trying to fix a mistake that felt written in stone. If you and Appos ever felt that pit in your stomach, knowing you messed up big time, then you know exactly the kind of battle I was fighting right now. I needed to abandon the strategy of prevention and embrace the strategy of pursuit. I needed to remind Emma who we were together before the money, before the status, before the betrayal. Before Valeria. I pulled out my phone, realizing I knew exactly where she would be right now. The small studio near the river. I set my jaw. Failure was not an option this time. I walked toward the river, ready to start the hardest fight of my life. My younger self, still arrogant and untouched by true failure, just walked away. He called me a lunatic, a desperate man trying to sabotage his success. Maybe in his eyes I watched him disappear around the corner, heading toward the life I now knew was a gilded cage. The air felt cold, heavier than before. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from the shattering realization. I could not stop him. The Ethan of 10 years ago was defined by his certainty, his hunger for validation, and his willingness to trade genuine love for perceived power. I was trying to argue logic with a ghost already seduced by the future. I failed. I slumped onto a nearby bench, burying my face in my hands. The mission to convince myself was over. It was a humiliating failure, proving that some lessons can only be learned through pain and time. The path to rewriting my history wasn't an Appos through confrontation. It was through winning back the heart I had carelessly broken. I stood up, tracing the familiar lines of the city skyline, the exact place where I made the worst mistake of my life. I recognized the sheer, stubborn blindness I possessed at 24. If you could give advice to your younger self, what painful truth would you tell him? I wish I had listened. I didn't and Appos need to change him. I needed to save her. I ran. I knew exactly where Emma would be right now, packing her small bag, the faint sound of her favorite record playing, preparing to retreat into herself, building the emotional fortress that would take years for anyone to breach. When I reached her apartment building, the familiar dread hit me. I hesitated at the door, catching my breath. This was the moment. If I stepped inside, the butterfly effect would begin, irreversible and unpredictable. I pushed the door open. Emma was standing by the window, bathed in the late afternoon light, tears silently streaming down her face. She looked devastated, heartbroken, the very image of the pain I inflicted. I had to say something perfect, something that stopped her before she completely broke. But all I could manage was her name, a strangled whisper. End quote. Emma? End quote. She turned slowly, her eyes wide, glistening with confusion and fresh grief. But amidst the wreckage of her trust, I saw it. A flicker. A tiny, almost imperceptible reaction to my voice that wasn't an oppose. Pure rejection. It was cautious hope, mixed with that haunting déjà vu. She didn't an oppose. Expect me. She certainly didn't an oppose. Expect the look in my eyes. A look that held 10 years of sorrow. I moved toward her, desperate to erase the agony on her face. End quote. I and oppose. Am sorry. End quote. I choked out. End quote. I shouldn't and oppose. Be here. End quote. She lifted a trembling hand, but instead of pushing me away, she merely wiped a tear, tilting her head slightly, as if trying to decipher a forgotten melody. End quote. Why did you come back? End quote. She whispered. My heart slammed against my ribs. I had the opening. I just needed to deliver the line that mattered most. End quote. Because I finally understand what I and oppose am losing. End quote. I said, my voice thick with emotion. She looked at me, really looked at me, past the shock and the pain. And then, for the first time since I woke up in this past timeline, I saw the ghost of a smile touch the corner of her lips. A fragile, beautiful sign that maybe, just maybe, the timeline hadn't an oppose. Locked her away yet. The hope that bloomed from that single curve of her mouth was terrifying and absolute.